Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Comics Get Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
Good evening, this is Dr. Issues. This is another issue about children of supervillains. I am a psychiatrist that currently dictate... Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. This is our podcast. I got into work mode there a little bit.
I like that. That's very... It threw me for a second. I was like, the hell are you talking about? That's not your intro.
When doctors do their dictations for case summaries, people think about surgeries and stuff, but actually I do that for whenever a patient is discharged. And I'm very slow at it, which means I get backed up and everybody gets mad at me. So yeah, that type of paperwork, not my strong suit.
I don't really know that paperwork is anybody's strong suit necessarily, but in any case, this is issue 136, and as our present level patron Matt is wont to do, he has selected a theme for us once again, and this time we are covering the children of supervillains, which just conceptually is a wonderful idea. We just did Shang-Chi a couple weeks ago, and we referenced this topic in that episode, so go back and listen to that one, and then go see the movie, because it kicks 17 different kinds of ass. But as you know, we were prepping this episode, and I printed out, or I put into the show notes, everything that Matt likes to give us in terms of prep on his end. And Doc says, this is an essay. We could just read it. I mean, but it really, truly is. You'll see it in the show notes. It's quite lengthy, and this is why Matt is who he is. And this is one of the many reasons why we've been friends as long as we have. So I'm just going to read his intro then. Let's talk supervillain parents. How do you go about modeling good behavior for your kids when your own behavior tends to lean towards world domination? Do you try and create a little lord of destruction to follow in your footsteps and eventually take your place? Or did the parenthood switch actually flip and you're horrified at the thought of your kids taking after you, leading to you doing everything possible to try and break the cycle? And if it's the latter, how do you do it? Do you go the Tony Soprano route and just keep them far away from your activities and just give them the best life possible so that they'll never want for anything and never have to turn to crime? Oops, now they're spoiled brats who lack empathy and act hurtfully towards others without a second thought. Christopher? Do you abandon the kid and stay far, far away from them so your corruptive influence will never touch them? Oops, growing up with an absent parent is actually a major contributor to a lot of social problems. Do you shield them and try to live a double life as a mundane, workaday, respectable person? Okay, that's a major time bomb waiting to go off when they discover the truth. Or do you decide the kid's worth going straight for? There's the rub. And so Matt has broken this down into 6 archetypes for the way these types of stories go.
And by the way, just to make it clear, I don't have a particular method to say like, oh yeah, well really there are 4 or there are 7 or whatever. I'm just following Matt's lead with this, okay? I love all of these ideas, so we're just going to riff off it, basically.
Yeah. Again, when Matt gives us a theme, he does so much of the heavy lifting for us that it really makes it's fun to get these kinds of theme episodes. And we're incredibly grateful to Matt because, like I said, he does so much of the work already that we just get to come in and step into this preformed idea and say, okay, this is the sandbox we're playing in this week. Let's have at it. So the first one is the ones who want their kids to follow in their footsteps, actively groom them to do it, succeed at it, and feel no remorse about it. The one that springs to mind immediately is Senator Roark from Sin City. Evil, ruthless, cunning, and sadistic to the core, his boy Junior, aka that yellow bastard, is every bit of his father and then some. I'm sure there are others, but he's at the top of my list.
Okay. Then I'll go with that. I know that character. I can't believe though that it pains me to think that people actually think this way, and yet there is evidence to support it. So mission accomplished. I wish I could say more than that. The idea that you have something you want in life, you then want a legacy to continue that, and you do it fully for you. But holy cow, the amount of isolation, desolation, and destruction that follows in that path. Like, you really want to go a road where you're guaranteed to be hated? Really? That seems counterintuitive to how humanity works and how society works. Now, the senator himself is a little different in the sense that if you don't know that's the background, and in this case, actually, that was true. It was a very much shadow situation where the people that knew he was bad were trying to fight it, but nobody else did. He was just like any other senator or whatever, which means that he still was at the bottom of humanity. Nope. That's a joke, people. That's a joke. I'm not knocking anyone that does public office. Okay, I'm just saying, corruption is pretty obvious sometimes. Oh man, I gotta be careful not to make this too political. But that to me seems to be the cheapest way out. Just the idea that you're going to ignore all societal norms for the sake of doing what pleases your, to go Freudian on it, pleases your id. That's pretty cheap, and I wouldn't condone that for anyone. And using the excuse of, well, I did it and you're doing it, and heaven forbid you're doing it better than I did, and it's wrecking tons of lives. Come on. That's the type of thing that, if you look at in our world, if you look at dictators that have children that are also dictators, but once again, that's even different because they're living the fallacy that what they're doing is overall for the greater good. And that's the only way they know how to do it. At least you can give yourself that false moral compass. This is above and beyond that. I'm just plain stupid. I'm sorry. I apologize if I'm offending anybody by how I'm presenting this, but that's really how I feel on this one.
Well, I don't think you should have to sugarcoat anything, at least not when we're talking about evil people who beget more evil people. I don't think even for someone as professional as you to say, what, let's focus on the pot. Like, if you're evil and your whole purpose is to beget more evil, it's a pretty shitty way to be. Other examples I can pull off the top of my head: Thane, son of Thanos; Sin, the Red Skull's daughter. Slade Wilson has a daughter. I don't remember her name, but she's just as cunning as her father. And Mastermind has a couple of daughters, all of whom have dabbled in various degrees of evil.
Okay.
So I would say that the whole notion of a supervillain who wishes to continue their legacy is certainly not unfamiliar. What is, I would say, more common, and again, to bring it back to Shang-Chi, who we just spoke about a couple of weeks ago, is the second one. And this is the ones who want their kids to follow in their footsteps, but fail at it miserably for one reason or another, and the kids become heroes. How the parents feel about it varies. There are lots of examples, but my favorite is definitely Darkseid with Orion. Mortal enemies destined to fight to the death, and both very willing to do so, but buried in the subtext all those decades, and finally stated in Countdown to Final Crisis when Orion kills him, is that Darkseid is secretly very proud of what a fierce, bold, renowned warrior Orion has become, even if it's all being pitted against him. So this is, again, Shang-Chi, raised to be an assassin by his father. And, mild spoiler, that's one of the topics and the story points in the Shang-Chi movie, is that he's raised to be this assassin by his evil father. They humanize his father way more in the movie than they do in the comics. But the point is that, whether it's Zheng Ji or Fu Manchu or whomever, that the whole point of Shang-Chi's father is, you are going to kill in my name. And of course, Shang-Chi becomes a hero. And we see that all the time because I think it speaks to the optimistic nature of the medium. And it does also make for a really great story that the child rises up against their upbringing, against their parent, and rebels. And it ties into the rebellion that we all can certainly understand as children and teenagers. And that they say, no, I'm not going to follow in your footsteps. So I guess you can sort of talk a little bit about that innate desire to rebel coupled with the desire for heroism.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, since I seem to be channeling a lot of the old psychoanalysis folks, once again, you can kind of think of the Oedipus complex, except without the whole sleeping with your mother thing. Just the idea that as you grow older, there is a natural rivalry that can happen with a parent. So from that standpoint, you have to make your own way. And especially if it's things directly related to what your parents are doing, you're going to step on some toes. So it's, I'll make this as dramatic as possible. It's like we could do this the easy way or we could do this the hard way. And the funny thing is, you can look at that from both perspectives. The parent is saying, you're my child, you can go ahead and follow my instructions, and life, at least as I see it, is going to be easier for you. Just take my advice. Meanwhile, the child's point is, the world changes and your advice may have worked for you, but that doesn't automatically mean it's going to work for me. So it's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake. So many times there have been examples of children that, as I love to say, they work on the remix. Except, forget remix. It's more like I just went into a completely different genre, and I'm going to just make sure you never, make music again. Sorry for the horrible metaphor, but the point still stands. There is a middle ground there that can happen, and thankfully, the development of the parent-child relationship usually does cross that chasm, but for the sake of these comic characters, it didn't. It just got wider and wider. So from that standpoint, when someone rebels, it doesn't mean it's forever. And even then, if it's something that led them to have what they consider to be a successful life, a parent can take some solace in that. Well, unless it's directed against them and actually leaves them to an existential crisis in their old age because they feel like they haven't accomplished one of the things that they wanted to, or it's literally being subverted by another person that's their own flesh and blood. So, little from column A, little from column B.
Well, I was going to say another couple of examples that I can think of, and certainly characters that we've done. Damian Wayne, raised by Talia to follow in the legacy of Raish and the Al Ghuls, and then, of course, decides to align with his much more heroic father, Bruce Wayne, aka Batman. I mean, we just did Starfire last week, but Raven is another example on the Teen Titans. Her father, Trigon, very powerful demon enemy. Daisy Johnson, Quake, Mr. Hyde's daughter, famous from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So the list of heroes with supervillain parents is even greater, I think, than the list of villains with supervillain parents, just because, again, I think it allows for that interesting dynamic, and it really does tie into the understandable feeling of wanting to do something different than your parents. And this happens, by the way, even if your parents are good. I mean, how many times do we see the flip side of this in comics where a heroic parent has a villainous child because they want to go against what their parents stand for? So it is that inherent desire to say, that's nice what you did, I'm going to do me. And, as the father of a toddler, that scares the shit out of me. Just the notion of I'm trying to set my son up for success, and he's going to be like, F you, Dad, I'm going to go steal cars and bust windows and wreak havoc. I pray to the gods that doesn't happen. So the third one is the do as I say, not as I do parents. These are ones who desperately want their kids to be good, but they're not willing to model good behavior themselves and give up their lives of crime. Most of the members of the Pride qualify. I think Xavin's wanted her to eventually grow up and be a Skrull overlord. but for the most part, they just want their kids to have normal, happy lives and go to great lengths to keep their supervillainy from them. This and the next one are the Tony Soprano, I'm not going to change what I'm doing, but I don't want you to go down this path. That's not an easy line to walk for the parent. And then it definitely becomes an issue when the child inevitably finds out about the villainy, because they will. You can't keep this from them forever, that this will inevitably blow up in their face.
Okay. Well, this is something that I think is very common to parents in general. We are not going to be perfect role models for our children. And for the children out there, please recognize that your parents are human. So I'll admit I'm a little more lenient on this one. This is a circumstance where there are varying levels, and I know it's going to get to the next point as well. Just the idea that if you're acknowledging you are a role model, then you have to say something about it. It's definitely the case that your actions are way more likely to have a lasting impact than anything you say. So keep in mind, wherever you are on that spectrum, you're going to have it lopsided. And in this case, it's going to be that classic thing of, I want what's best for you, and I'm going to say that, but all of my actions indicate something different. And for the most part, when children see that, they usually get a level of resentment. If that's the case, then that's going to lead to the need for some very deep conversations at some point in the future if you want the relationship to continue to be positive. Otherwise, children may end up going their own way anyway, in a way that's closer to the previous topic that we mentioned. It's not a guarantee. Definitely not a guarantee. And as children mature, they may recognize what the intent was and have a different perspective, especially as they have their own experiences in life that may, in some ways, mirror what their parents went through. But as always, there's enough of a spectrum with that you don't know what the timeline is on that either. That could be when they're an adolescent and say, oh, now I get it. Or it could be in their 50s and you're on your deathbed. And in that case, it's going to be tons and tons of missed opportunities. So I'm not claiming that there's one right way to resolve this once it goes down this rabbit hole. But at least from my clinical judgment, the sooner the better. And you're going to have to live with the consequences of whatever you decide to do from that point forward once the open dialogue happens. I hope it's in a healthy way. You have whatever mediation is necessary, and best wishes, best of luck.
Yeah. And again, conscious parenting is something I've discussed a couple times on this show, and it's about being mindful of what your children see from you. And it is not easy. It is a mental drain, admittedly, but giving your children a positive role model and actions to model upon is so incredibly helpful. And there are just things that I see in my kid at 2.5 that I'm grateful that I was mindful to say and do in front of him. Now, am I perfect? No. Do I occasionally yell and take things to a place where I don't want to? Yes. And I immediately step back and I apologize to him and I explain that I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have reacted that way, because what I'm doing in that moment is, I shouldn't be modeling the negative behavior, but what he's focused on instead is how I handle that. And I'm modeling the apology and the aftermath of that. And that's going to be something that he's going to take away, because what I think this is kind of getting into a tangent, but what I think a lot of parents try and do is just never show that negative emotions, and they just try and stay happy and positive all the time, and they don't want their kids to be sad. Your kids are going to be sad. Your kids are going to be angry. It happens. They're natural emotions. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. What is wrong, subjectively speaking, but from my perspective, what is wrong is acting like they don't exist and trying to tamp them down. If you do that, you create emotionally repressed children, and then those emotions are going to come out in really negative ways because they're not going to know how to handle the negative emotions when they do pop up, and you're not around to teach them or tell them how to respond. Let them figure out their own emotional responses. Let them figure out their own responses to the stimulus. And then as long as it's in a non-harmful manner, you model that kind of behavior and you give them that space and that freedom. What these parents do with the do as I say, not as I do, that never works. When's the last time your parents told you, do X because I said so? Well, how well does that ever go over? This is sort of tangential, but it does relate, is if I want my kid to do something, I will do it with him. I can't expect him to do it just because I give an edict. That's not going to fly. It's not going to fly when he's 2. It's not going to fly when he's 12. It's not going to fly at any point. What I need to do is model that behavior. And to this day, whether I'm with my child or not, I don't ask anything of anyone that I'm not willing and able to do myself. That's something that I carry with me into the workplace, as a colleague, as a subordinate, as a supervisor, whatever. I have never asked anything of anybody that I'm not willing and able to do myself. If I'm asking you to do it, I'm either going to do it with you to help you, or I'm asking you to do it because I literally don't know how to. And even if that's the case, I will say, listen, this is kind of the parameters I'm looking for. And then I will leave this to your expertise. So do as I say, not as I do, never works. So just get rid of any of that sort of mindset. Get that out of your vocabulary. Get that out of your life. As parents, we need to model the good behaviors and the positivity that we want to see in our kids. And even if it's negative, we still need to model how to handle that in a graceful manner.
Well said, sir.
So the next one is the number 4, give my kids everything they could want so that they won't need to be criminals' parents. And again, this is sort of the Tony Soprano method. Best example Matt can think of is definitely Tombstone. When he's not away in prison, he gives his daughter Janice everything, spoils her rotten, eventually gives her a first-class education at Columbia Law. She worships him and wants to be like him, but he's horrified that she would stoop to follow in his footsteps. He got her that law degree so she'd never have to. And besides, as he says, a lawyer's work is basically crime that you can't get arrested for. And really, he's not wrong. As a lawyer, As a lawyer, Matt, fuck you for being right. And of course, she becomes the Beetle. The other example I would say is Sandman. Sandman is the first one that pops into my mind for parents who aren't going to walk away from the life of crime, but he's going to spoil the bejesus out of his daughter. Flint loves his girl.
Yeah. So in all honesty, I'm just going to call this what it is. This is just spoiling kids. Like the villainy part isn't nearly as important. That's what it comes down to. At least in my opinion. That's something that I don't know how many books have been written about. And just the idea of, you mentioned conscious parenting, making sure that external factors aren't the sole exposure of raising your kids. When people talk about spoiling kids, it's not the idea that kids are getting too much love or affection or attention from their parents. It's that there are lots of other, be it physical, monetary, or other people that are being placed as permanent substitutes. That's really where the damage lies. Because the idea that you lose empathy for others because you got a lot of positive things ahead of time in life, that's not a guarantee. You don't have to be quote unquote spoiled because you're the product of rich parents or politically powerful parents or whatever. As long as the time and effort is taken to explain the world in a way that shows that this is not the only way people live. It doesn't have to be the stereotypical, well, I'm going to throw you into the ghetto and you'll see what it's really like. That's not really what I'm automatically advocating. Although if someone wants to have more hands-on experiences of what people do, and traveling is a great way to do that as an example. But the point being that you have to at least make sure a child is aware of the world at large, not just their little bubble, not just their little sphere. And it's up to you to make that happen. And that's the whole point. If you're saying that you're spoiling your kid, or someone says you're spoiling your kid, they don't know you. That may be right or wrong. The thing is, if you ask your kid, how do other people live, and they can't give you an answer, that is when you know that you've got some work to do. That's what it comes down to. It's how they're going to interact with others. They can live a cherished life of great luxury and still recognize that there are people that are going to need a hand, and you be the one to extend it and lift as you climb. You actually have the greatest opportunity in the world if you are a child of parents of means, because you now have the opportunity to build the greatest legacy that the world has ever known. And if your parents show you, I shouldn't say let you, if your parents show you what that means, then you don't have to be spoiled. You can just make waves greater than anybody ever thought possible from someone at a young age.
Speaking a bit from the heart there, Doc?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm definitely seen on this one, because it is, I'm not going to lie, I think about this every day. I recognize where I am from a financial standpoint. I recognize in the house I'm in, with the woman that I love, with the women that I love. My daughter is everything. And the fact that she has shown so much so far, I think it's okay, but I'm not that naive to say that I'm doing it perfectly or whatever. And I know I still have a lot to learn, and I'm grateful that I get to learn it with her, and she knows that. So from that standpoint, I pray that I'm giving her that perspective, and I think we have set her up to have it the way I honestly think that my parents gave it to me. And if I'm not, then I want someone to call me out on it at some point. Not some point. I want someone to call me out on it immediately. And I will do my best to course correct.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the best things that we can do for our kids, to show them that we are human. It's funny because I am always of two minds on this, because I want to show my son that I'm human. And yet there are times that I see the way that he looks at me, and I see that idol worship, that notion of, my daddy is this incredible person. I mean, he does it with my wife too, but just the way that he looks at us, and to see that love in his eyes, and to know that it's just so pure and that he just thinks the world of us. It's hard not to get sucked into that and to want to live up to that ideal. I think of the line from the first Ant-Man movie, be the hero she already thinks that you are. That is real. That is legitimate. And it's such a tightrope to walk, because there comes a point in every kid's life where they realize that their parent is a human being. And this is one of the things that was just done incredibly well in the Philip Kennedy Johnson run on Superman. He was Superman in Action Comics. I believe it was in the Superman books, a series of interactions with Jonathan Kent and Clark. And it's Clark talking about the first time that he realized that Pa Kent was a man. And it's the same thing that he says, Jonathan seeing him get hurt fighting these things, because he's Superman. He is a god, but not entirely. So it's that notion of, what does that do to a kid when they see the fallibility in your parents? It's a heavy thing. And so it's, as I said, it's a balance to walk between still wanting them to love you and to have that ideal, while also acknowledging that that's not going to last forever. And so it's the hope as a parent that when your kid does hit that point and they do come down, or they do see you fall, that it's not traumatic, that you haven't built yourself up. You can't build yourself up as a parent to be so infallible that when your kid inevitably sees you fall, that it's a shattering thing for them and they don't know how to recover. So you have to inject your own humanity into parenting, for your sake and for your kid's sake. So the next one, we're on number 5 now. The ones that are horrified at the effects their villainy has on their kids and desperately want to change and go straight. Easy example is the lizard. Curt Connors became the lizard almost entirely by accident and devotes nearly every lucid moment alternating between trying to cure himself and mitigating the damage to his family that his episodes cause. And he either must be really, really good at it, or Martha and Billy Connors are saints for how much they put up with from him. Until Martha dies and Curt has to change Billy into a lizard to cure him of the carrion virus.
Hashtag because comics.
So with something like this, honestly, in terms of a real world analog, I'm thinking more of the potentially absentee parent or the parent that, let's say, has struggled with substances, has, I don't want everything to just be pure villainy. It's more like things aren't going well for them and they're not able to be the parent that they realize that they could be or should be. So from that standpoint, you now have to bridge the gap. And that could mean that you have done things wrong or you've been an abusive parent. And maybe you've even had restraining orders or gone to jail for things that you've done against the family. Whatever it is, at this point in your life, you have actually made a decision that you are looking to be involved in your family's life and your children's life. That can happen at any point. It doesn't have to be young childhood. It can be teenagers. It could be adults. There are people that develop for the first time in their lives a relationship with their parent after having no interaction or negative interactions up until that point. The thing that I would say to the parent is whatever emotional response the child has to those conversations, it's valid. I really want to say that because if they're angry, if they're accepting, if they are questioning, if they are totally shut down and removed from it, whatever it is, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. So that's going to be the level you're starting at. And I'm not saying it's a one-way street, but I am saying that it's very narrow lanes and cars pass one at a time, whichever way it's going. So you're going to put in a lot of work. There's no question about it. You're not going to have a circumstance where this is going to be an easy transition process. I would really hope that it ends up being positive for both parties involved. I would say at the worst, I would want the parent to have the knowledge that they really did put forth their best emotional and behavioral effort to whatever means they were looking for, because I'm sure they have their own idea of what they think the relationship, quote unquote, should be, and whether or not that matches reality is actually out of their control. It's because it's up to another person. On the child side of it, as I've said so many times, and I'll be very honest, there are therapists that don't agree with me on this, and I respect that. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I made my point and I said that the child's emotional responses are valid. My thing is, I've set these limits before. If this is a situation where this person has demonstrated significant amounts of pain and you're recognizing that that interaction is going to continue to lead to more pain, then I would say proceed cautiously. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a relationship with them. I'm just saying proceed cautiously, which is actually a little less than what I usually say. A lot of times I've said, I think you should just cut bait. But at the same time, if you do have that feeling, and I'm quote unquote going with your gut, and you're getting that feeling, then don't ignore it. Give it its credence, give it its processing. I would recommend talking with another person, someone that you trust, about those emotions rather than just acting on impulse one way or another, because there is no blueprint for how these things are supposed to go. And whether you consider it to be, quote, right or wrong as to how someone should deal with it, then make sure that you recognize that if something has been going wrong for however many years, waiting another day is not going to be the destruction of a rejuvenating process. And that's true on both sides. So you don't have to finalize anything at any point. You have your whole lifetimes to make this work. As long as you remember that, then hopefully on both sides, you can end up with better outcomes.
I think it's an excellent point because I think so many of us tend to view the establishment of a positive relationship as some sort of end goal, when in actuality, relationships are never done. I'll rephrase that. Positive relationships are never done. You have to maintain them, whether it's a romantic relationship, a marriage, whatever, or even a friendship. You have to maintain that relationship. It's not something you can go, all right, we're good now, and then just sit back and rest on your laurels. You have to work on it. And that means putting in time and energy and discussion. We talk all the time about the importance of communication, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with colleagues, or in this case, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your parents. And to your point, the need to set up a positive relationship, like you said, if things are damaged or if there's been a problem, taking an extra day to think about it, to process your emotions, to be aware of your emotions, and then say, okay, I'm going to speak honestly about how this is affecting me. Taking that extra day or, a couple hours, what have you, to make that determination is not going to be the end all be all by itself. What it can do is be the difference between a positive step towards better experience or taking a step backwards, depending on your word choices, depending on your emotions. Because if you come in hot and you've got that knee-jerk reaction and you're just going to go half-cocked and I'm pissed off, whatever, and that's where you're coming from, then that's not going to lead to a positive resolution. If you take the time to process things and say, okay, I am angry, but I'm going to hold off and not come at this emotionally charged, it's going to tend to lead to a better result because you will have taken that initial emotional response out of it. And what you're left with is the process of what those feelings mean to you. And hopefully the listener, the other half of this relationship, is going to acknowledge that. And I would also say that you also have to give them the time to process things. That if you're taking the time to figure out your emotions in all of this and how this is going to impact you, it's a two-way street. You have to allow them the same capacity to say, all right, now I need to sit with this for a bit. Okay, take your time. Come back to me when you're ready and let's talk about that. You can't process things but expect them to be able to respond instantaneously. Full disclosure, I'm guilty of that sometimes in my marriage, is I will sit and ruminate on something for a while, and then I'll go talk to my wife and then expect her to have a fully formulated response because I've been sitting with this for, an hour or a day or what have you. It doesn't work like that. People are not computers. You can't input something and expect your output to be instantaneous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the last one is the ones that unconditionally love their children, whether they're allied with them, fighting against them, or don't want to have anything to do with them one way or the other. They do anything for them and fly to their side in their times of need, no matter what. Hello, Magneto. That one's obvious. A slightly different dynamic would be Galactus with Silver Surfer. The arcs written in the last 20 years by J. Michael Straczynski and Greg Pak have really showcased an entirely different dynamic between the two. Surfer will always be Galactus's creation and still finds himself at odds with him from time to time, but the two will help each other out if the other needs it at the drop of a hat. Surfer understands Galactus a lot better, and to the extent that Galactus as a cosmic entity is capable of such things, I think Surfer is clearly his favorite herald, and he has an infinite capacity for forgiveness no matter how many times he rebels. I liken them to a father and son, where the son has grown into a mature adult himself. Even if they don't have a lot in common, they're always family, and they'll always have an unspoken bond. I would say that this is the healthiest, quote unquote, of the six, that this is the closest to a very positive relationship because it is still that unconditional love. And regardless of what you do, I'm still going to be there for you. And this is that's the kind of thing that we all, in theory, aspire to be and do as parents.
Yes, the idea that as everyone navigates through life, we all recognize that we should check in with each other and for the people that we care about. We do everything we can to support them. And when we need help, we're also willing and able to reach out and recognize that there are those that are willing to do the same. So that's an amazing thing, which also surprisingly leaves me with the fact that there's an issue I'm going to add on top of this, because I think that one is already spoken out well enough. I don't have much to add to it. I'm going to flip the issue just before this, number 5, the situation where the child essentially has just, I don't want to say vanished, but the child has gone their own way. And even through like the most observant, neutral party looking at the situation, the parents didn't necessarily do anything to trigger this. You know, the child has made their own decisions and things are starting to break away. So I was talking about kind of the, if you want to call it, the redemption arc of a parent that's done so much wrong. What about the child that has done so much wrong? And I'm bringing it back to reality. That's why I'm doing it this way. I know it's not a villain. I'm saying, for whatever reason, the child has gone on a path that nobody expected, and it's not necessarily even laid at the feet of the parents, but it's their situation. So they're now dealing with that. And that parent, time and time again, and I'm going to use a really obvious example. Parents have been total teetotalers, but not necessarily even bashing the idea of occasionally smoking weed. And yet their child, for whatever circumstance, is now gone through so many rehabs, has overdosed and been near death countless times. And each time they've come back, their parents point out, we're always here for you. And I know we've had these episodes in the past talking about substances and saying the combination tightrope of tough love and saying, you know, we don't want to be an enabler versus we don't want you to die. So you're dealing with a lot there. And you know that the literature says that you shouldn't constantly keep that person under your thumb and giving everything to them, similar to what we were talking about with quote unquote spoiling a child. Not even saying it that way, because I'm not talking money, but also fearing the phone call one day from the hospital or from a police officer or whatever, and just dreading those weeks or months that you haven't heard anything, but you're confident that you're going to hear something, and you do again, and it just repeats itself. So once again, I'm going to try and approach this from the parent perspective and the child perspective, because I know there are some people right now that are listening to this and you're in that situation. If that's the case, then recognize that, take time for yourself, make sure that you are doing the proper self-care so that you are recharging for this long battle, this long struggle. I shouldn't say battle. You're not fighting the other person. Recognize that if you need more resources, then they are always available. And I apologize. I know I'm riffing on substances, but there could be other reasons too. But if you need Al-Anon, just for your own sake, to try and get the perspective of what it is to be the parent of someone or any family member or friend of someone who is struggling with some serious condition, recognize that that's a good way to continue to be there for them, even if they're not physically there. When they do come to you, it's okay to still be a parent and to love them. There is nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with your own safety as well. Because if they're ready for it, they'll respect it. And if they're not ready, then it'll take some more time. It's not your fault. It's not. From the child's perspective, whatever reason it was that this path has happened, there's no point in dwelling on what could have been different. Recognize that the people that say they love you, if they still are willing to talk to you, because that's not a guarantee either. They could have just as easily shut you down and shut you out. If they're willing to have the conversation, then that means that there is something there. In that case, recognize it for the blessing that it is, even if it's just a talk that goes nowhere. No one can make you ready. No one can make that change. That's up to you. At some point, there are going to be people that you're going to need. It might as well be the people that gave you birth if they're willing to do it. Obviously, if there's too much pain for other reasons, then once again, looking to create more pain, especially if we're talking about, like I said, these situations where it's led to a condition that's going to just amplify itself, don't get on that hamster wheel. I wouldn't recommend that. But if it's a true clean slate and olive branch that you are offering, then make sure that you're using an open hand instead of a closed fist. So I have these phone calls every week, and it breaks my heart and it brings me joy. I've seen it both ways, and I'll gladly keep doing it as long as I have the mental capacity and the breath to do it.
And the world is grateful for you that you continue to do this. So that's the 6 archetypes. We're going to take a quick break to plug our sponsor, BetterHelp. And when we get back, we will get into real world analogs in as much as there's anything more to be said. So stay tuned. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your individual needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can begin communicating within 48 hours.
It isn't a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp has a network of over 15,000 counselors with a broad range of expertise. You can log in and message your counselor anytime and get timely and thoughtful responses. You can also schedule regular video or phone sessions. No waiting room required.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you feel you don't have a good connection. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial help is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/capes, that's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Special offer for Capes on the Couch fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/capes.
Everybody has a story, and not all of those stories are clear black and white issues, even when we think they are. We wonder, how did this happen? Or what is that like? Or what happens next? Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss at IWB Podcast.
Hi, I'm Gail Simone, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So Matt says, this isn't even one of those themes where I have to stretch it to find a real world analog. Lots of us were raised by parents who didn't model great behavior for us. Heck, in our generation, half of us grew up with broken homes, and a lot of those situations led to one parent being absent and barely raising us, if at all. There have been libraries worth of sociological and macroeconomic studies that have detailed the effects. If you're a prospective new parent who's fortunate enough to be aware that you're a very flawed person who needs to avoid passing on your negative tendencies to your kids, how do you go about doing it? I would think that's kind of a question more for parenting professional and or a sociologist, but
man, oh man, I mean, let's be real. If we knew the answers to this, then we wouldn't have tons of books and different philosophies debating this since the existence of mankind. I'm not going to pretend and have the answer to that. The one thing that I will say is, and I do mean this, it's going to sound like a joke, and it's not. It's like, congratulations. You have a total blank slate. Other than your genetic material, your child knows nothing of you. They don't know what you did. They don't know what you said, all prior to their existence. So from that standpoint, you got super lucky. That means that, quote unquote, and I'm not advocating this, as literal as I'm saying it. That means when you start with a 0-0 scorecard, just don't shoot the puck back to your own goalie, okay? There's plenty of things. I think sometimes we focus so much on, okay, what's the great right thing to do? And while I appreciate that, I think sometimes just getting the little wins, like if your child is crying and it's the cry that someone around you, like be it the other parent or whatever, if they recognize, oh wow, they're struggling, and you just hold them, congratulations, you won. From Jump Street, you won. You did what you were supposed to do. If someone's hungry, you feed them. If someone is cold, you give them something to warm up. If someone's too hot, you give them something to cool down. If you made them smile and laugh a little bit, then feel good about it. If they did something wrong and you did your best to try and point out what the right thing or a better option would have been, great. If you yelled too loud while you were doing it, or if, I know spanking still exists, I'm saying, but whatever. My point is, maybe it's not the perfect way. I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm saying recognize those small steps for the beautiful thing that they are and build from there. Don't try and create the next genius or savant in a particular field. Don't worry about whether or not you're going to have the rebellious teen. Here's a hint, you are. Don't worry about if they're, and I'm going to bring up some very heady topics and how people may feel about it, so be it, but I think it's important to say, don't worry about if your child is autistic. Don't worry about if your child has a disability. Don't worry if they are gay. Don't worry if they are bi. Don't worry if they're trans. Don't worry if they're pan. Don't worry about what their educational level of achievement's going to be. Don't worry about their income. Don't worry about their fame. Don't worry about their infamy. Don't worry about how many relationships they have or how few they have. Don't worry about any of that.
As my sister says, parent the child in front of you.
That's it.
And it just means deal with what you got, deal with your child that day, do the best that you can. And if you see something pop up, address it then. And this has been incredibly difficult for me because I am the kind of person who likes to think 7 steps ahead. And even before my wife was pregnant, I was asking my sister, well, how, what do you do if, you're trying to get this, or how do you stop your child from getting this? It stems from my own issues and neuroses and lack of acceptance of myself. And it comes from parenting from a place of fear. And it's fear that I'm going to pass all of that bad shit on to my kid. And you can't do that because your kid is going to pick up on all of that stuff anyway. They're going to pick up because kids have, I said this before on the show, kids have very finely tuned bullshit detectors and they can pick up on that stuff. And 2, your child is going to have their own issues. So you're going to spend so much time trying to focus on making sure that they don't have yours, that you're going to miss being able to help them with the ones that they do have. And that's going to end up adding to the list as it is. So that's not something that's been easy for me. And it's a constant struggle. And like I said, it's part of that conscious parenting and being able to take day by day and just say, okay, what are we dealing with today? And how can I address this? Yes, to some extent, we all look ahead, but you can't be so wrapped up in trying to prevent something from happening that you miss what's right in front of you. So I think that's a huge part of it as well.
Yeah. And just to address one other aspect of this that may come up, and it probably will come up. When someone says, oh, your kid is just like you, how does that make you feel? In other words, let's say that you don't think highly of yourself, either because of behaviors that you've done before or your own conditions or circumstances that you're not proud of, then guess what that means? It's kind of the whole point of this podcast. Eliminate that stigma and recognize that the more you do for yourself, then the more you're doing for your child. Because the better you feel about yourself and the things that you work on for yourself, your child is going to benefit in the long run as well. There's no question about that. That's been shown time and time again, because it's a great, great opportunity when a child sees someone who knows how, because let's be real, what you are is a leader. You are a leader of humanity. That's what a parent is. We don't like to think of it that way because that's way too heady, but you are a leader of humanity. And give yourself the best generals, the best scholars, the best, the best people around you, and let them see that. And I'm gonna steal something here. This is from I watch a lot of sports, and I used to listen to a lot of ESPN. I don't anymore, but one of the radio shows, Mike Greenberg, who still is with ESPN, He was walking down the hallway at ESPN headquarters in Connecticut, and he passed Lou Holtz, of all people, the former head coach of Notre Dame. And Lou Holtz is known for being just this very, I'll just say it, odd individual that sometimes will give random quips. And I remember this thing because I had never thought of life this way, and it's amazing. He actually just randomly stopped Greenberg in the hallway, and he said, "You got kids, Mike?" He says, "Yeah." Lou says, "The best thing you could do for them is show them how much you love your mother." just a statement like that. I kind of realized, like, I know we've already talked about it in so many different ways, like kids model what you see and everything else. But when you show that you are doing the best you can, then that shows kids that they can be the best they'll be.
Very well said. This was about as heady as I thought it was going to be. So I don't really have anything else to add to it, mostly because my brain is fried after everything I've gone through this week and then recording these episodes. So we're going to end it here. I will just say, we don't have any recommended reading, but
read comics.
Yeah, read comics. Read them with your children. Go out, find something all ages that's appropriate for your kids and read it with them. Doesn't have to be superhero comics either. There's all kinds of comics. It's a medium. It's not a style. So I would say read with your kids. And if they're still around and you've got a great relationship, read some with your parents. So next episode's Squirrel Girl. That should be a really fun one. Wiccan and Donna Troy. I'm going to start reading now for Donna Troy so that by the time the episode rolls around, I maybe have an inkling of an understanding of what the hell her background is. And even then, I'll probably go, I don't know what the hell is happening. So as always, you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And as we said last week, please leave us a rating review. And if you do that, email us a screenshot of that rating and review to capesonthecouch@gmail.com along with your name and address, and we'll send you a sticker as a way to say thank you, because the more folks who like, rate, review, and subscribe to the show, the higher we climb in the rankings, the more we get seen. And it's all about continuing to grow and build the show. Tell your friends about us. Share the stuff on social media in any way, shape, or form that you can. Because like I said, I'm not trying to sound like I'm begging, but we want to grow the show. We want more folks to listen to us. We appreciate every listener that we've got, and we want more. I mean, that's not greedy. That's just, we would like to expand the reach where we can. So that's pretty much all I've got. Doc?
So for everybody listening right now, I just want to say thank you to all the parents out there and all the children out there. Just keep doing the best you can.
For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.